Hello, 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 everybody. Welcome in to the second day of the WW1 themed weekend. Today, same as with the last themed weekend, we're gonna have the watchalongs, and I'm gonna read a few stories, which I have hand selected. And by hand selected, I mean I bought a book. And little heads up, by the way, I don't know how noticeable it actually is, or if it is even noticeable, but I tweaked my audio settings a little bit, so I don't know if I do sound any different, if it's just minor. I'm still in the middle of tweaking stuff because I'm currently not very satisfied with the audio quality I have, at least for my mic. Although this could be completely biased because I just do not like my own voice, as with most streamers, I think. At least most I've spoken to. But yeah, I'm trying. I try to tweak it here and there a bit. I got the feeling I sound a little bit metallic almost in my streams. And I think it's called with artifacts. Something artifact thingy is this called? I don't really remember it. I'm actually not an audio technician, so oh god, I wish this would make this so much easier. But you can't do everything perfect. That's how it is. So yeah. Today I have prepared a few videos. We can watch along most of them. How do I know all of them? I'm not sure. Let me check the list again what I've prepared. I don't think I know the last one, but I know the story about it. Yeah. So, what I also want here yesterday, just a little heads up. What is this themed weekend? What does the weird tale teller do this time? As I explained already, it's WW1 themed weekend. Because I decided for my themed weekends, I don't just want to do like silly topics always, or I do prefer them. But sometimes it's, I think, important to also have a bit of a more, well, serious tone, quote unquote. That we just have a little bit of variety in here. I think this has also a sort of, at least for me. But yeah, entire stream is all for the Extra Life Emergency Fund, or from the Extra Life campaign. Basically, all the donations, the donation counter up top, is for donating to children's hospitals in the US. In my case, we are donating towards the emergency fund of Extra Life, which will be going to the places where it is needed the most. And if you want to donate something, if you're able to donate something, you can, of course, you can donate down below. In the panels, you'll find the necessary informations. And I think there's also like directly the donate button. Yeah, there's the donate button directly down. All the taxes, yeah. All the donations are tax refundable, if that is something that is important to you. And for everybody who does not feel comfortable donating towards a third party site that you don't know, you can also just gift a few subs, gift a few bits, or really just watch the stream, and all the ad revenue from every stream will be tallied up at the end of every week and then added towards the counter up top. So I will do this after today's stream, for example. Everything we got will be added towards the counter. We also have a few donation goals, milestones. If that is an additional little incentive for you all, it should be visible down below in the panel where you can donate. If you wanna take a quick peek at it. But yeah, this is the rough roundabout way we're doing. For the beginning, we're gonna mix it up a little bit today, and because last time I read everything at the beginning, and then we watched Epic at the end for the Greek mythology weekend. This time we're gonna mix and match a bit. We're gonna watch a few videos first, then I'm gonna read a little bit, then we're gonna watch more videos, and I also have like one or two more sillier videos prepared, or more funnier, entertaining videos, so that it's not that grim and dark. Yeah, I think we're gonna hop right into it. I prepared, first of all, a few videos from the channel Oversimplified, which basically talks about the whole World War I, the whole Great War, from start to finish I think in 2 parts, about like 50 minutes. That should be very easily digestible, not too much detail, too heavy. Well, heavy topic is probably, it is a heavy topic. But they make it a bit more fun, so it's easier to digest. Yeah. Still gonna make it sound so grim, don't I? Definitely not my intention, I swear. Like this. And curiosity. Now we're gonna switch over to our little game/react screen real quick. Veep. Oh. I think it's something not quite aligned here. It's just zipped over. I need to check this. Anyway. We gonna start. First video. I'm gonna stop the music. And I'm gonna select the screen. It's all it's not really much difference. And we're gonna watch World War I Oversimplified Part 1. And after that we're gonna of course seamlessly continue. Well, almost seamlessly continue towards the second part. Because I think it's very important at the beginning that everybody has like a rough understanding. I mean, pretty sure most people know about the First World War. It's not like I'm telling you news. It's not like I'm talking about the Mongolian invasions. Most people not ever heard about it or know the details about it. It's yeah. But yeah. I think it's just a good beginning point to watch over everything. And yeah. Let's get this party started. Ow.
Oh. The world of 1914, a time of modern technology, culture, and fashion. Truly the height of civilization. Let's have a war. Everyone knew a big war was coming. France wanted some stuff back that Germany had taken from it.
Yes,
Germany
also
wanted to take more of everyone's stuff, and they were building a big sexy navy that was making the British uncomfortable. These two
this was the time of the Bismarck
really cool,
too.
But lots of different people who lived there didn't think it was so cool. And some of them had even been declared.
Oh yeah, the Austro-Hungarian Empire, very interesting construct. I'm gonna stop the video every now and then, especially like for the Austro-Hungarian thing. As an Austrian myself, I feel almost obligated to talk a little bit about it. A very interesting state with many different ethnicities. From Ukrainian, Polish, Hungarian, Slovakian, Slovenian, Croatian, Bosnian, Serbian. I think there are also like a bit of, well, Czech of course, Italian, and a bunch of others. Those are the most prominent though. The funny thing actually is, what many are not aware, the Austrian language, which 99% is German, but we have a few unique words actually that were borrowed from those different countries we, well, occupied, controlled, whatever you want to call it. So there's still some similarities from there in terms of food, culture, language. So we still have a few parts of it, which is kind of interesting.
Independence with help from Russia. Everyone was talking about each other behind each other's backs. Throw in the fact that military technology had come a long way since the last major war, and suddenly everyone was pretty eager to beat each other up. In this area of Austria-Hungary live some Serbs and Bosnians who hated living in Austria-Hungary. So the Austro-Hungarian Archduke Franz Ferdinand goes there for a nice drive in an open-top car with his car's route published in advance. And that went just about as well as you'd expect. Some assassins were waiting for him along the way and threw bombs at his car, but they missed and blew up some officers behind him instead. So the Archduke goes into hiding, leaves Sarajevo, and the whole war never happens. The Archduke doesn't leave, but instead goes back out in the open-top car to visit the injured officers in hospital. The driver takes a wrong turn and by sheer coincidence gets stuck beside one of the failed assassins, who shoots him.
Yeah.
Austria-Hungary is understandably pissed about all this, and they...
Absolutely wild coincidence. First, narrowly avoiding the assassination attempt, and then... trying to... I mean, Franz Ferdinand was a more progressive heir than Franz Joseph, the reigning emperor at the time, and tried to push for more not independence, or for more autonomy for the different nationalities within Austria-Hungary. Still, the whole monarchy was extremely unpopular due to way too many years of oppression. And even if someone said, yeah, hey, this guy is way more progressive and everything, I mean, this doesn't really mean that much. But it's an interesting tidbit that he was considered actually a more progressive heir than the current ruler was.
I think the Serbian government had something to do with it, which they might have. So they go to their ally Germany and say, hey Germany, we're going to declare war on Serbia, and Germany is all for that. So Austria-Hungary send a big list of impossible demands to Serbia, and when Serbia refuses, they declare war.
Funnily enough, apparently most of those demands that Austria sent to Serbia, they would have accepted. There are only like a very few, if not even like just one or two, they could not agree towards. But most of them, they would have even considered agreeing to it, from what I heard. But please do not quote me on this. It's just something I picked up. I don't know if it's actually true. Overall, there were still points they could not accept. I do not have the full list in my head, or at all, in fact. So might look this up later.
Austria-Hungary and Germany are friends, and Serbia is protected by Russia, who's friends with France. So they'll declare war on each other. Montenegro joins in too. France and Britain also have a kind of alliance. So when France says, hey Britain, you got my back? Britain is like, maybe? And then they decide to stay out of it, which is great for Germany, because Germany has a plan. They know that Russia is so big and clumsy that it will take them a while to get ready for war. So with this guy in charge, Germany will send all its troops into France at lightning speed while Russia's getting ready, defeat France, then move all the troops to Russia and defeat Russia, and then we all speak German and eat Pfefferpothast every day.
I have no idea what Pfefferpothast is.
Just one problem. France has loads of forts and defenses along its German border.
Yeah, they fortified the entire line.
Germany can't waste any time fighting them, so Germany decides to go around them through Belgium.
I think at first they just asked the Belgian government if they can just funnel their troops through there without actually invading them. But for obvious reasons, Belgium was not that keen on just letting hundreds of thousands of foreign soldiers go through their country, even if this was not considered an invasion. But you know, what stops them from just looting and pillaging anyway? Besides, I think Belgium was neutral, protected by Great Britain, but they still had a sizable French population, and this would just, but not bode well.
Belgium is neutral, but Germany wants to march 750,000 troops through it to get around France's defenses. Yeah. They're hoping Belgium will just kind of sit down and shut up, but they don't. They fight back, and they're pretty good too, so they slow the Germans down. What's worse is that Britain shows up, and they're pretty pissed that Germany's invading neutral countries. So now Britain declares war on Germany. So Germany push on through Belgium and commit some atrocities along the way.
Oh yeah.
They also wear spikes and sometimes skulls on their uniform.
Yeah.
So if you're trying to not look like the bad guys, Good job. The Allies have a propaganda extravaganza, and this starts having an influence around the world, notably in America. The US President Woodrow Wilson sees himself as a bit of a Jesus figure, and spends most of the war trying to get everyone to just hug it out. But there's also a large population of ethnic Germans living in the United States, and when the war first broke out, they were like,
I think German immigrants is like the third largest population in the US, or at least people with German background, German heritage.
yay, Germany. But now that they're committing atrocities in Belgium, they're less enthusiastic. Let's play Spot the French Soldier.
Oh yeah, the French.
Did you see him?
Yeah,
Easy,
the uniform
right?
was
He's wearing
atrocious.
a bright blue uniform with red trousers. And do you know who else spotted him easily too? The Germans. So when the French were slowly marching in columns through the countryside, the Germans easily tore them to shreds with their giant guns. All the nations involved in this war went in with an old-school war mentality, and all of them had to update their uniforms and tactics a lot during the Great War. Because this war was going to be like nothing anyone had ever seen before. Russia's ready for war, and way earlier than expected. Hey, Austria-Hungary, can you get on top of that? Oh yeah, sure, we've got
The Austro-Hungarian army was absolutely atrocious.
this. Nope. So Germany has to send some troops back to the east to defend against the Russians. The chief of staff of the Austro-Hungarian army is this guy, and although he is handsome, he turns out not to be the best military strategist. Austria-Hungary constantly ignores Germany's advice, and then comes running back to Germany whenever they get in trouble. Austria-Hungary even gets its ass kicked by tiny Serbia, who repels all their invasion attempts at the start of the war. It's better news for Germany in the north, though, where they almost completely wipe out the Russian second army. Back on the western front,
like the Austro-Hungarian army was insane. Insanely bad.
Anyone would be forgiven for thinking the Germans were going to get that quick victory after all, but then things start to go wrong. The French commander-in-chief knew something had to be done, and he ordered his armies to stop retreating. In the resulting battle, a gap opened up in the German lines. If
Battle
a
of
gap
the Marne.
opens up, the enemy can use it to flank you from the side and behind, so the German armies have to retreat. The Allies launch a counterattack, so the Germans dig into
And
defensive
that's the trench warfare begun.
The Allies do the same. Then both sides move north, trying to outflank each other along the way. When they reach the sea, they're in a stalemate with trench systems running the whole way from the coast to Switzerland, the beginning of trench warfare on the Western Front. Here's how trench warfare works. Two opposing lines of trenches with no man's land in between. One side would pummel the other with hundreds of thousands of artillery shells, sometimes for days at a time.
Oh yeah.
This had a huge psychological effect on the soldiers,
Shell
leaving them
shock.
shell-shocked. Then, the attacking troops would leave their trenches and rush across no man's land, a muddy wet mass of shell craters and barbed wire. The defending trench would unleash machine gun fire on the attackers, inflicting thousands of casualties. The attackers would send wave after wave until either they gave up or the opposing trench was finally overrun. There would be months of fighting and the deaths of thousands in order to gain a few meters or kilometers of land.
Yeah.
Living in the trenches was hard work too. Corpses, mud that could swallow you whole, pools of poisonous water, rats, disease, the smell. It's insane that millions of soldiers put up with these conditions, and commanders ordered them to do so for years.
This was pure insanity, trench warfare. And this is something that honestly is nothing to be proud of. Nothing at all. Probably one of the most atrocious things that happened. Besides the poison gas stuff. Which, yeah, probably get into this in this part. That's the second part now.
With both sides stuck in a hard stalemate, they knew this war wasn't going to be about taking territory, but about simply wearing each other down. The Allies had plenty of men to expend from its overseas dominions.
Not, especially thanks to Great Britain and France, who had just an absolute insane amount of colonies. I mean, everything you see here in Africa, plus India, plus Australia, plus Canada, plus a little bit in South and Middle America.
And the British also started a naval blockade, so Germany couldn't import stuff, like food.
Insane.
Neither side really wanted a long, grueling war, though, so they both thought of ways to break the deadlock on the Western Front. Idea number one, new frontiers. When the war first broke out, Australia was quick to take German New Guinea.
Yeah.
The Allies also quickly jumped on Germany's colonies in Africa, and particularly in German East Africa, locals were enlisted as soldiers as colonies in Africa.
But Germany did have a few colonies, as we can see here. I think at first they wanted to try to keep them out of it, but it did not hold. That did not hold.
And particularly in German East Africa, locals were enlisted as soldiers and carriers by both sides, leading to a tragic loss of life for the native Africans. Some new combatants entered the war as well. The Allies' new friends were Italy and Japan. Japan was busy building itself an empire, so it was more than happy to take away German islands and colonies in East Asia.
Yeah, they basically just did this because they wanted this stuff.
Italy actually had
Did
an
not
alliance
care.
with Germany and Austria-Hungary before the war, but after some tense relations, and then the Allies promising to give them some of Austria-Hungary's stuff.
Yeah. Basically, Italy got Trieste and the southern Tyrol region from it as a reward for participating. This is what they had their eyes. I mean, they had their eyes on the entire Adriatic coast down here. They basically wanted to have this entire thing, which is now Croatia, parts of Slovenia, and whatnot.
They switched sides.
But yeah,
Italy
absolute
opened up a front
opportunist.
in the mountains here, but like everyone else, they were stuck in stalemate for most of the war. The Central Powers' new friends.
The fights in the Alps in southern Tyrol here were especially grueling, mostly in the winter, completely frozen over.
Struggling empire in the Middle East.
Insane.
The Ottomen were divided on whether to actually join the war or not, since they had been exhausted by the recent Balkan Wars.
Yeah.
Some of the politicians who did want to join went off on their own and fired some shells at Russia, and then came back and said, "Whoops, looks like we're at war now." The Ottoman entry into the war was of particular concern to the British, since the Middle East was full of oil, and Britain wanted all of that oil.
Yeah.
First, the Ottomans tried to attack Russia in the Caucasus Mountains, but they weren't prepared for the cold, and many of them froze to death. Then they crossed miles of desert to take the Suez Canal from the British, but that failed too.
Yeah.
Then the Allies tried to take the Dardanelles at Gallipoli in a long and hard trench warfare campaign, but that also failed.
Yeah,
The
Gallipoli
Ottomans
was a
blamed their
disaster.
initial losses on the ethnic Armenians living within Ottoman territory, and the resulting Armenian genocide led to the deaths of 1.5 million people. Then the Germans sent spies into Afghanistan to try to convince the Arab tribes there to rise up in jihad against the British and attack India. But that plan failed, partly because the spies got bored, brewed their own alcohol, and got drunk, which is a bad thing to do in Afghanistan.
Yeah.
All these new frontiers hadn't done much to change the war. Aware that the Allies had more men and supplies than them, the Germans knew they had to do something to break the stalemate. Before the war, there was a big conference that set out the rules of modern warfare. No chemical weapons, no killing civilians. Basically, don't be jerks. The Germans held a meeting and decided to be jerks.
Oh, yes.
Zeppelin air raids commenced over British cities. They also started attacking the Allied trenches with chlorine gas, and they used submarines to sink civilian ships. One such civilian ship was the Lusitania, which had 159 Americans on board when it was sunk, further swaying US opinion against the Germans. Not to be completely unfair to the Germans, the Allies also engaged in chemical warfare soon after, and they had been hiding anti-submarine weapons on their civilian ships, which let the Germans justify their attacks. Meanwhile, Austria-Hungary still hadn't dealt with Serbia, so the Central Powers enlisted some help. Bulgaria wished it was bigger and was still bitter about losing the Second Balkan War. The Central Powers promised to make all of Bulgaria's wildest dreams come true if they helped, so they signed on, and together they knocked out Serbia. The Serbian troops retreated through Albania, which was neutral but had some ties to Austria-Hungary. So Austria-Hungary entered Albania in a friendly invasion to chase down the Serbians, many of whom escaped by sea. It's 1916, and a lot is happening. As if they didn't have enough enemies already, Germany added one more to the list. Portugal had been getting a bit chummy with the Allies behind the scenes, and Germany didn't like that one bit.
I mean, a bit chummy. The Portuguese-UK alliance is basically one of the oldest alliances that exist. They have been allied for hundreds of years, so they were always friendly towards each other.
Around the same time, the only sea battle of the war happened. Both sides had a new powerful class of battleships called dreadnoughts, but they were so expensive to build that neither side wanted to risk losing them in a battle. So they kept them in port, except for one time when they had a big fight and a bunch of them got damaged, so they didn't try that again. The UK started conscripting men to the army, so they had plenty of reserves, which is just as well because the Western Front was about to get brutal. The longest and one of the bloodiest battles of the war started when the Germans launched an attack around the French city of Verdun. The French defended it desperately, leading to hundreds of thousands of casualties. Under pressure, the French called on its allies to do something to draw the Germans' attention away, so the British started their own long and brutal fight,
the Battle of the Somme,
with 60,000 British casualties on just the first day. It was also here that the British first used one crazy brand new piece of sci-fi technology. The Russians had been getting pushed
Replacement
back
for the
further and
cavalry.
further into their own territory, but in response to the French call for help, they began a huge offensive, and did really well until they ran out of supplies and got stuck. Seeing how well the Russians had been doing, Romania decided now would be a great time to jump in and win the war, and then they got pounded. The Greeks were fighting amongst themselves about whether to join the war or not. The king liked the Central Powers, while the Prime Minister wanted to join the Allies. After a brief national schism, during which the country split into two, the king finally abdicated and the country reunited. With Allied help, they began a new offensive. In the Middle East, Russia was pushing into Ottoman territory from the north. The British had also made a landing in Mesopotamia to protect Persia's oil fields.
Yeah, from
And they had also sent a small army up the Tigris River to try to take Baghdad, but the army got sieged in the town of Kut along the way and eventually surrendered. A new offensive was launched from the south with all-out desert warfare. The offensive was aided by one famous British officer, better known as Lawrence of Arabia, who helped lead the Arab tribes in a revolt that wreaked havoc on the Ottoman supply lines.
Lawrence of Arabia, also extremely famous person, which, with the promises he made as basically an emissary for the British, led to a whole bunch of issues. Generally, the end of World War One led to a whole bunch of issues in the Middle East that persist, unfortunately, to this day. I will not get into the details here because this is a discussion you can't win, unfortunately. My opinion just is, I wish everybody could get along, but I know it's not that simple, unfortunately.
By the time 1917 rolled around, everyone was exhausted. There were mutinies in the French army, the German populace was starving, and the war had drained all of Russia's supplies. There was no clear winner, and it was still anyone's war. The only question now was, who was going to break first? And the answer was Russia. Tired of not eating and mad that a crazy magic homeless guy was calling some of the shots, there was an uprising in Petrograd complete with riots and strikes. The riots turned into a full-scale revolution and a new government overthrew the Tsar. Then a few months later, the Bolsheviks overthrew the new government, and they pulled Russia out of the war. This was great news for Germany, who now only had to focus on the Western Front. But there was still one problem. The pesky United States of America was looking increasingly like it was going to join the war. America had been selling supplies to the Allies throughout the war and was getting super rich off the back of it, meaning it was in fantastic shape and was dangerous to the Germans. So Germany sent a telegram to Mexico saying, wouldn't it be crazy cool if you guys attacked America?
And this was an absolute foolish idea. They're probably gonna say it. The message got intercepted and forwarded to the Americans by the British. It's
intercepted the message
insane
to the Americans, and that was the final straw.
Yeah,
American
insane.
troops began shipping out to Europe. This was terrible news for Germany, and they knew their only hope now was to force France and the UK to surrender before the fresh American troops arrived.
No
It was
chance.
now or never. So they started one final attack. They converged their troops and hit hard at the Somme and pushed the Allies back. They hit a second time further north, then again and again.
It just cost too many
The
resources,
Germans
though.
were spending more and more resources, while the Allies were getting better and better at repelling their attacks. By the fifth punch, the Allies held the line and even pushed back. With American troops now arriving in larger numbers, the Allies launched a counterattack, and that was it. The Central Powers were being pushed back on all fronts.
Yeah.
Bulgaria collapsed first, followed by the Ottoman Empire, then Austria-Hungary, and finally on November 11th, 1918, at 11 o'clock, Germany surrendered. At the peace treaty, Germany was forced to reduce its military, accept war guilt, and pay the bill for the war. After indescribable suffering and millions dead, the world learnt its lesson and never had such an awful war again.
Until it did.
For about 20 years.
Yeah. We're not getting into World War II with the angry mustache man, though. Not the topic of today's stream. But yeah, World War One. It ended with the Treaty of Versailles, which was aimed mainly towards punish the Germans, especially by the French, because they were the most annoyed by it, to put it mildly. But unfortunately, this only accelerated the fact that World War II was happening. German economy went absolutely downhill, especially since the French occupied the Rhineland, which was like the most industrious part. I don't know if it's still the most industrialized part of Germany. Probably. And which they had so huge war repayments, they could have never done this. This is also the reason why at the end of the Second World War, they didn't do this and actually helped Western Germany succeed again. Basically, if we bind their economy onto ours, they will not attack us, which worked. But those were lessons learned thanks to the First World War, because, yeah, as I said, really, really bad decisions were made in this case. Let me think. How are we gonna do this? How are we gonna do this? Should we watch the next? Because the next one is also a two-parter. Oh. Doesn't work, does it? Hello Unleashed, welcome. It didn't work yesterday. But what's up with the redeem? Why doesn't it work? Oh, by the way, sorry for me flickering around a little bit just there. Wait, let me... Because it didn't work. Check this actually real quick. What is up here? Operation. How to reconnect? Just a quick second. But I need to log in for this. That's probably why it didn't work. Got my Twitch password here. Because I'm always so determined on having everything secure that I have mega complex passwords. Yes. Check this room. Can't reach this side. Well, that's just lovely. Okay, now we're reconnected. You guys on. This. You tested? Items? Why does it not work? I think I have to check this after stream. What is a very popular redeem? Because you guys apparently like to throw stuff at me. Let me deactivate it in the... Probably some update that ruined it or whatever. Classic. Yeah, I have to check it. Now it's not the time.
This was a letter.
Nope. Yeah, I think since I want to mix and mash it a little bit, we start with a bit of reading, huh? I think at least until the ad break. So let me change up my model here. Whoop. Whoop. So, it's a bit better for reading. Oh, damn it, I forgot to... A sec. I was like having like a little campfire sound in the background when we were reading. Okay. As I think I mentioned it before, I specifically got a book for today's reading exercise. Not exercise. And for anybody who's interested in reading. Just a quick second. I think it's nice if I put it up on screen what we are reading today. Oh, it's a bit big. So this is the book we are reading. Oh, I'm reading to you. It's The Christmas Truce by the Man Who Took Part. By Michael. Those are a bunch of letters from the Christmas truce in 1914 during the First World War. Actual letters collected by relatives, by newspapers, because they were actually the most reliable part of information that anybody could get back home from the front, especially in Great Britain and US. But the US did not really take part on it yet. Most of the letters are from British people, some from French. There were a few American soldiers back there too, but I don't know if there are any letters. Just gonna read a few letters from fronts, not all at once. As I said, we're gonna make a couple of like video breaks in between. I have a few more videos prepared. One of them I accidentally started for a quick second. We have 8 different fronts, or 7 different fronts, and some miscellaneous that are not directly can directly be sorted towards a specific front. And yeah, we always have a little foreword or a little prologue before we start into the letters, and I will definitely not read the entire book because we're gonna sit here until tomorrow if you do that. I cannot read that long in one go. Check real quick. Yeah. Okay. The first section where we have letters from is British section on the Western Front, or a British section of the Western Front, between Saint-Yves, LuxTaleor, and Leguer. So this is up in Belgium. I probably horribly mispronounced those names. I do apologize for that. But I'm not a native Belgian or French, and most of the front line was in France and Belgium, if not all of it. I think Luxembourg was completely overrun at the time already. Yeah. Up of prologue is from Christopher Maud Javi, a hospital chaplain at the front. The pluck of the man is wonderful. One quite a lad was bleeding inwardly, opened his eyes and said, "Well, we do. I told him the grand charge his regiment had made, and he said, "That's alright then," and died on the spot. Christmas Day seems to have impressed everyone. Our part of the army practically did not fight at all. It was Truce of God. It came about not from any official quarter, but from the man himself. German and English met in the space between the trenches. They exchanged greetings, Christmas puddings. In one place, they played each other at football. In another, an English and a German chaplain together held a joint burial service. But the truce was especially used in this way. I was very pleased about it. So many soldiers ask, why God not finish this war? And say, what a failure Christianity is. Christian nations go to war in such a murderous fashion. Of course, I can answer them, but such a tragic episode appeals to them. Such a dramatic episode. And I feel it is another distance of O Nasre, thou hast conquered. Hello, Daddy. Christmas truce. Damn, I'm crying for the humanity lost after this short, pristine moment between people who just want to go home. Get in a chat, just listen, getting the kids ready for bed. Wonderful for you to shed more light on this. Actually, At a Christmas Truce is one of my favorite stories in recent histories. It is extremely bittersweet, but I think it shows that even in the darkest times, in the most cruel times, there's still a chance for humanity to prevail. That we are not just driven by cruelty and destruction. Because then the average person doesn't want this. And I think the Christmas truce really encapsulates that. Unfortunately, it could not prevail since this happened at the beginning of the war. But it is still a sign that things can go better. But yeah, do take care of your little ogrelings, and I hope I can soothe you in a bit with the stories, with the letters from the front line that were sent during Christmas truce. The next letter we have here is from Private Seaforth, from a private from Seaforth Highlanders, so the battalion company of the Seaforth Highlanders. A Scottish company, I assume. Actually quite a lot, this battalion. You would read about the British soldiers jamming with the Germans at Christmas. On Christmas Eve, the Germans were all singing and shouting over to us. The trenches were about 300 yards from the company. They were wanting us to come over to get some cigarettes. So a color sergeant, corporal, myself, and 2 others went over about 8:30 p.m. We took our rifles and 50 rounds of ammunition as wise precaution. When we were halfway over, the color sergeant shouted to them, "Come, meet us." But they would not leave their trenches, so we decided to go straight over. Right over the trenches we went, and as soon as we came near, they ran out and kissed us and embraced us and nearly shook our hands off. They were surprised when they saw our rifles. Therefore, we bluntly told them that we had armed ourselves, not knowing their little game. However, they gave us cigarettes and cigars. Of course, when we were over, we had a good look at the trenches. They were the 10th and 20th Bavarian Regiment. We never mentioned anything about the war, and we returned later to our lines without touching upon the subject. We had told our boys about the cigars and cigarettes. They were over the parapet like rabbits, and also got tobacco from the Germans. Christmas Day, the Germans were walking about all day. So we went out, upped wires up. There was a dead Frenchman lying between our lines. The Germans dug a grave and buried him. I think we were about the first, the British Army, to visit their lines. As we were over German trenches on Christmas Eve 30. Of course, when we went over, it was passed down the lines, and I expect to travel for miles. It's so interesting. I mean, most stories of that are nowadays told about the Christmas truce tell understandably about the more cheery parts when they were playing football outside and exchange gifts, which did happen in quite a few places. But often it was just burying the dead, and some who went over did, of course, look at the fortifications of the enemies, took note. Because why not? It is an obvious advantage they had. The next letter is of Private John McKay, decoy, 2nd Battalion of the Seaforth Highlanders. I was on sentry duty as Christmas Day arrived. I must confess that it was indeed beautiful to hear the Germans singing carols and their national anthem. We too are all singing and cheering at the pitch of our voices. It was just like being at home. At about 4 o'clock in the morning, the Germans again struck up with 4 or 5 musical instruments, all of which played Christmas carols. And during all this time, the music was being ruffed through the air. You could hear a pinfall. So, ruffed through the air, pinfall. So basically, could really hear only the so everything went silent. Everybody just listened to the music, which I think is a very beautiful sentence. Just be nice if this would have actually marked the end of the fighting. Bit of a longer letter. There's a longer one. It's from Corporal John Ferguson, the 2nd Battalion of the Seaforth Highlanders. Written in August 1915, so it's written a bit later. Christmas Eve in the trenches, not too comfortable. Arms going night and day. Could never bring the waterline to less than 2 feet above our boots. A small stream which flows parallel to our trenches, and also made use of the ladder as an overflow. Being the cause of most of our discomfort, it is almost dark, and being only 100 yards from the German trenches, and at night less than that. It is almost possible to listen to conversations in the trenches, raising our voices very little above the usual. We can make ourselves heard and understood. Very little sniping had been done by either sides, Germans being exceptionally quiet. We started singing carols, and they applauded us. Then they sing, and we applaud. We are not quite so harmonious as they. There are some very fine voices amongst them. The stillness of the night and our mood may have helped. But as the sound floated over the turnip field of our trench, we are spellbound. We give them 3 cheers, British ones. When they sing, God Save Our King, quietness reigns again. What are they up to? Behind their trenches are hung Chinese lanterns, arranged about 10 yards in about 10-yard interval. Illuminations, any other night. The glare of lightened cigar or the flash of a match have drawn our fire. But tonight, no one snipes. It is Christmas Eve. We heard it rumored that there is to be a truce, but nothing was given out to us officially. The order being, as usual, keep a sharp lookout. All of a sudden, someone calls from the German trenches. Komrad! English Komrad! I answered him. Hello, Fritz! We called him all Fritz. Do you want tobacco? He asked. Yes, I answered. Then he says, come halfway. We shout back and forward until old Fritz clambers out of the trench, comes towards us. Accompanied by another three of my section, we go out to meet him. Fancy we are walking between the trenches, which at any other time would have meant suicide. Even to show one's head above the parapet would have been fatal. But tonight, we go unharmed. Although a wee bit shaky. Out to meet our enemy. Make for the light, he calls. And as we go nearer, we see his flash lamp, and putting it in and out to guide us. When we met, we shake hands and wish each other Merry Christmas, and are soon conversing as if we had known each other for years. We are in front of the wire entanglements and surrounded by Germans. Fritz and I in the center. He occasionally translates to his friends what I am saying, and we stand inside the circle like street corner ornaments. Soon, most of our company, A, hearing we have gone out, follow us. For short, they call me Fergie in the regiment. And to find out where I am, they keep calling Fergie. Germans thinking this is an English greeting, answered Fergie. What a sight. Little groups of Germans and British extending almost the length of our line, talking away. Out of the darkness, we can hear laughter and see lights matches. The Germans lighting the Scottish cigars and vice versa, exchanging cigarettes and souvenirs. Where they can't understand the language, they are making themselves understood by signs, and everyone seems to be getting on nicely. Here we are, laughing and chatting to men who, only a few hours ago, we were trying to kill. I am surprised at the good English some of them speak, especially Fritz, and ask him about it. He says he was in Edinburgh for 15 years and only left in August when he called up. He knew of our regiment, having been stationed in Edinburgh for years during the time he was there. He also tells me the name of the regiment that relieved us, Dublin Fusilier, and also when we were relieved. How did he find out? He wouldn't tell me. We were working 4 days in and 4 days out of the trenches, and the coming in and going out were the most dangerous times. We were always having someone hit. I ask him how long he thinks the war will last, and he says that he wouldn't have lasted so long if the Russians had still been beating the Austrians. But now that the Austrians were punishing the Russians, he thought it would last 4 or 5 months longer. At that time, according to our press, the Russians capturing and slaughtering the Austrians with thousands. I try convincing him on this point, but he produces a German paper for corroboration. I'm sorry I didn't take a copy of Lloyd's Weekly, which I had in the trenches with me. For his paper marked military press and, as I hear later, printed, especially for the troops. Oh, I see we have an ad break coming up. So we're gonna stop right there real quick. We're gonna continue. we're about halfway through this letter. So let's all take a little bit of a break. I'm gonna use this opportunity to drink something. But yeah, those stories are... I really like them. I really do like them. And there are the ads. It's almost quite weird. They say the ads are starting in a minute, and it takes another minute until they actually start. I don't know why this is. Actually, let's sit upright. The only thing I have to say which I do not like about this book is that it says like this weird paper cover over the hardcover. Which, I mean, it can be kind of cool, but I just prefer like a pure hardcover one. Took it off during reading because it's a bit out of the hand with like paper cover. To protect the hardcover? Was it just, yeah, maybe probably just cheaper to like paper cover. Hold on, the back of the book. Yeah, I think it's the back. Hold the back. They are actually really nice engravement of title in it. And the book itself is just no. This campfires is very relaxing to listen to, I gotta be honest. Stretching. I could use this opportunity real quick. We need to update the... I'm still a bit annoyed that this does not work. What was I about to say? Oh, with the book. I mean, right now it wouldn't work anyway. Which reminds me, I probably should deactivate all the channel point bots that are mixed with my model. Very much point in keeping it up. Welcome back, everybody, from ad break. I think this is a good time to continue. Oh, clever as I am, I of course closed the book entirely. There it is. Where we do left off. He says, what does it matter who wins? As long as we come out all safe. And tells us to save our ammunition for the Prussians. Says, we are the 28th Bavarians, the regiment which captured our Gordon Highlanders. He seems quite proud of his regiment, but they all have a hatred for Russians. They had arranged not to fire for 48 hours, whether we did or not, but warned us that the Prussians, their left, will be sniping. Their dogs, he called them. Really quite fascinating, because especially during the German Empire, during the First World War and before that, the Germans in between did not get along with each other that well. Especially the Bavarians were very independent seeking. And the Prussians were always like, you know, the scapegoats. They were not the scapegoat, they were the most disliked because the Prussians actually unified Germany under Bismarck. But they were not particularly liked by many other Germans, necessarily. They kept their promise, and neither of us firing 2 days. It is like being in a different world. Here we are, Christmas Day, and able to walk about our heads up. Some of our men are leaving the trench now to play football. Party of our B company has been over and got photographed with the Germans. As we say goodnight, we invite Fritz and his friends to pay us a visit in the morning. Next morning we saw them coming, like an attacking force in an extended order, but all without arms. Our colonel, who had not heard of our last night's excursion, saw them coming. Also saw me up on the parapet, waving my hand, and I called, "Here you are, Fritz." Very soon the colonel was enraged and said, "Who is that man waving the enemy over here? Send them back." He called to them in German, "Go back or we'll fire." Everything he said in German was answered by our friend Fritz in English. Our major went out and spoke to him and said we only wanted those Germans who wished to give themselves up. Did he intend doing that? But Fritz was ready and said, "Respecting your rank, sir, but I'm not here to talk politics." They all then went back to their trenches, and we to our loopholes, with orders not to fire unless they left the trenches, and then we could warn them back by a high. It was a very quiet day, but we had made friends with our enemy, and all day we kept calling and joking across to them. December 26th. They have not fired yet, but the artillery has been busy, and they have the range of our trenches. They have started shelling on the right. Word is passed along our section with fire the reserve trenches. I had just left a mud hut to carry out the order. Saw the telephone wires smashed by a shell, and the next didn't know, like me, did. Result: left arm amputated at the elbow, and shrapnel wounds on the thigh. In all, I have had 13 operations, 6 pieces of shrapnels and 2 bullets removed from me. But I know, it was not our newly made friends, the Bavarians, but the artillery of the Prussians who shot me. The dogs. That's a very bittersweet. This also explains why this letter was written in August of 1915. Probably was at operations until then. I have a letter from an officer at the Highland Regiment. On the afternoon of Christmas Eve, really began to feel Christmassy. There was a gorgeous red sunset and a hard white frost, which dried up our rain-sodden trenches and dugouts. Then, as the pale moon rose behind the enemy's lines, making even the hideous barbed wire entanglement shimmer tiny lights, like a Peter Pan fairy gleam. Faint sound of singing, growing stronger, floated across our lines. Song followed song, one voice predominating the clear tenor. Some of the songs were English, and we joined in on our side. Not a shot was fired. All was silent. All was silence, save for the distant rumbling of guns to the north. All was peace and goodwill. And voices called to us. "A Merry Christmas," we replied. And as if caught by a sudden feeling, many of us left the trenches and clambering over the barbed wires. We went to the halfway line, exchanged compliments, gifts with the enemy, tobacco and cigarettes, for cigars and newspaper. We returned to our trenches and sang songs, and then the moon sank. We became on the alert again, and the sniping continued. Christmas morning woke the bright sun, the ground mist. No shot was fired. We all left our trenches after breakfast. It's a great surprise. We all received Christmas cards from Her Majesty, King and Queen. We were all proud of them. Have the thought promoted the gift. It is the most noticeable censoring man's letters. They always write King and Queen. After midday dinners, we called on the enemy to come meet us. We had a 2 hours conversation in the middle. One German subaltern spent 4 years in Glasgow, had many scenes and acquaintances in common. There were the 134th and 133rd Saxon Regiment. One great big sergeant expressed great regret at the war, having spoiled his football. He toured Britain last year with a Leipzig team and beat the Glasgow Celtics by 1-0. All were sure of final victory for Germany in 6 months latest. Of course, here we differed. One officer showed an interest in looking towards our trenches, and I turned him around, saying, "There's some little secrets we can show you." And he laughed and agreed. The Germans had an opportunity, burying some of their dead, who had lain for 5 weeks open lines. All day long, we walked to and fro with newspapers, our little photograph, and parted regretting that it was our duty to go for each other. We did arrange, however, to have a 2 hours interval, Boxing Day, from 3 p.m. to 4 p.m. for a football match. This, however, was prevented by our superiors' headquarters. It is terrible to think that one day can be at such peace, such a good feeling, and on the others must occupy minds, inventing diabolical methods of destroying one another. But it was a real Christmas. With our charming Boxing Day presents, Princess Mary, and our other presents, the kind folk at the trenches. We were relieved from our trenches, Boxing Day, in heavy snow, and now at the most comfortable billets. A lot more letters, especially from this. I actually wanna move over to a different, not a different line, but this is further up north in Belgium, between Bessis and Wolfgerham. I cannot pronounce this. I do. Yes. Here we have a section of a couple of shorter letters. The first is from Private William Ridd, 1st Battalion of the Devonshire Regiment. Well, at Christmas, people at home took good care not let us forget time of the year. But there were plenty of presents and Christmas puddings. The doves started to come about a fortnight before. And since that, they've simply rolled in. Our trenches were so near to the Germans that we could easily shout across. Some of them speak English, so we were able to exchange remarks. It was freezing very hard on Christmas. So I slept. So sleep was out of the question. But we were lucky to have a fireplace, French fireplace with some holes in it. Coke to with Coke is actually a sort of charcoal, not like the Colombian Coke. For those who are not aware of it. We sat around this, passed the night away singing carols, stories, Christmases, and in pre. The Germans in their trenches were also singing hymns. Some of them fish tunes. On Christmas Day, there was no firing. Next is of Corporal Parker. Corporal Parker, 1st Battalion of the Devon Regiment. And hello, gentlemen Berserker. Welcome in. Hope you enjoy your time here. I must tell you about what happened on Christmas Eve. The German trenches here are only 150 yards from us. Last night, at one of them, shouting out in English, "You no shoot, we no shoot. It is your Christmas, we want peace, you want peace." But we agreed that each side send a man halfway. Our officer gave his permission. He's a perfect gentleman. I went halfway, the German did the same. And we met and shook hands. I gave them some tobacco, and they returned a compliment by giving me some chocolate, biscuit, cigars, and cigarettes. And each side gave souvenirs. I had a pair of gloves, a watch, and a chain, and a beard brush. So, you see, I got a good Christmas present, able to walk about safe a few hours. There's a song I could play about the story, one of my favorite things that happened in history. Do you mean by song the Christmas Truce from Sabaton? Perchance. This is actually my favorite Sabaton song, by the way. Yeah. I thought about showing this on stream, but I have my PC volume up and you're very quiet. Am I quiet? I mean, I can probably wait. I messed about a bit with my audio settings, but I can turn up the gain a little bit. Ah. Yeah, you're pretty quiet. Okay, is it better like this? Or same me? Yeah, otherwise I could... Better. Same for me, but I thought it being... No, and hello train. Wait, let me turn it up a little bit more. As I said, I messed about a bit with my audio settings. And additionally my my firmware from my microphone is updated. Also the reason why I messed about with it. But I hope it should be better now. I hope it should be better. Put up the gain a bit. It is. Okay, perfect. It's always so hard to really determine it for yourself. Thank you for letting me know. Lot louder now. Too loud? I mean, I can turn it down a bit again. Nope. Okay. No, no, okay. Good, 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 good. Okay, so I think we're gonna read one more letter, and then we're gonna going to back to watch a few videos, and then we're going back to reading letters. I think this is a nice rhythm to have a bit of variety in it. Okay, we have a bit of a longer letter again from Private M. Boer from the 1st Battalion of the Norfolk Regiment. Christmas Truce was an amazing moment of pure humanity. Yeah, absolutely. I said it earlier. I don't know if you were there. In my opinion, the Christmas Truce is one of those events where you can definitely see that no matter what anybody's tell you, humans are not hell-bent on destruction and chaos and killing each other. No. Those are situations that we're being forced into, if anything. And the Christmas Truce is a good example of humanity, of true humanity prevailing in the most dire situation, even though it was only for a moment. And that's why I love this story so much, of this time period. Because no matter who you are, we're all humans. And especially in the cases of the First World War. I mean, for those who were here in yesterday's stream where we played Valiant Hearts, like the story in Valiant Hearts is based on letters, on things that actually happened. And in this case, a German was married to a French woman, and he was deported, living right on the border. He was forced to fight for the Germans, and in France, the father of the woman was forced to fight for the French. So those are situations that happened. And in few of the letters we read earlier, we had stories of Germans in there where they mentioned they were living in British cities for quite a few years, or visiting Britain for football matches and whatnot. Nobody really wanted this fight. And it shows they can get along. But sometimes circumstances force us to certain things. But I think this shows that even in today's times, when things are getting more dire in certain places, things look like they're getting more chaotic, more polarized, more everything. We should never lose hope that things are getting better. We never should stop trying to work towards it. Because if we lose out on this, like, nothing will ever go better again. That's at least my 2 cents on it. And thank you for the Hydro Regime. This is a very good idea. Make a little swing. Okay. Now onwards to the letter. Well, on Christmas Eve, we went to the trenches at around 4 o'clock. We just had our tea and plum pudding and set about our duty. And were enjoying our pipes and cigarettes. We ploundered off to the trenches, raining and very cold it was. But we got talking about the old folks at home and what we should be doing if we were home and so on. We get down in the night, except the sentries. This one in every 3 to an hour century at a time. And the password is keep a sharp lookout. Now it is my relief, so I get out. My comrade says, listen Sid, the Germans are calling us over there. The cry was, come on English, and have a drop of Johnny Walker. but we were not talking to any of them. We're not taking any of them. They would sing at the top of their voices and shout to make all the row they possibly could. And that was amusing us. I could tell you, all this time, we never had a shot over to us. And we had not fired to them. They had fires, like we do, on gunpowder plot night. And so, we were making a night of it. And it was a night I shall not forget. I finished my sentry go and turned in to leave the Germans to it. I wake up at around 4 o'clock, very cold. And they tell us it has been very quiet, so we set out across to the farm. And when we look in the ruined barn, we find, to our surprise, a dozen chickens. Of course, being Christmas morning, we say, what about dinner? And I suggest we must have one or two. We can make a capture. Now we dive for them, and being beautifully moonlit, we can see them through the shattered roof. So anyway, we get free of them, and quite pleased we are with our capture. After a little chat about our Christmas dinner, we begin to light a fire and prepare breakfast, which consisted of fried bacon and some of us a tiny tin of macaronis, and make a cup of cocoa and some a canteen of tea. Anyway, we get a good breakfast on the top of our trenches. The Germans are walking about theirs, and we are taking no notice of them. It comes over very foggy in the morning, and we slip across the fields to some houses that have had a shell or two in them. We find a pan and 9 plates, and a good pack of wood chopped already for the occasion. We get dinner and sit and talk about home and say, well, we are not in the cold today, and our fire is great comfort in the cold today. I can tell you, we were making for those days when we had not had one. So the morning goes on very quiet, and we're enjoying ourselves under the circumstances. With dinner very nearly ready, I go to my place and get a plum pudding that the good wife has sent me, and I have carried it around for about 6 days, or rather 10, on purpose, to have it if we were in the trenches, and of course we were. I don't want to go sick, but I should like to have a little holiday, see my wife and children. It's the hardest part of the contract, we parted from our family. But there it is, our king and country want looking after. And we are the chaps that must hold up the honor of our forefathers, who had to fight for the roofs above our heads. It's not a pleasant job, but it's got to be done. And I hope we shall come out victorious. Well, now we have had dinner of chickens, macaronis, and plum pudding, and now we can make a pan of tea and a chat. The fog has lifted a little, and to our surprise, we can see across to the German trenches, and we can see 2 Germans coming across to our trenches without rifles. We watched, and 2 of our fellows get out of their trenches and met them a sight that was highly amusing, as they shook hands, as if they were brothers. Then you ought to see. You ought to have seen the Germans. They came across to our trenches, but not too far, as if they would not do to let them see too much. And off we ran to see the fun. As soon as I got across, I went around, shaking hands as fast as I could, and a fine hearty welcome they gave all us, and we them. Those that could speak English said they, the officers, would not give us a holiday, so we had to take one. We no fight today, no fight tomorrow, and no fight the next day. But after that, we are enemies. As soon as they had shaken hands with us, they handed cigars and cigarettes round, as if they had a store of them. Of which I think they had, as they were all full of them. Anything I like on Christmas Day is a cigarette, and I had all I required, so I did not like to say no. Well, during this little affair, they formed a ring, and one played a tune on his flute, and they cheered him very much. And now they started to sing a Christmas carol in German, but the tune was English, just as you sing it at home, and it was beautiful. Our choir could not have sung it more beautifully, and you could see their eyes full of tears, most of them. I should say most of them were 40 or 45 years of age, and they told us they were all reserves and married men with family, and would be glad when it was over. They watched us by special requests, and they wanted us by special request to sing "It's a Long Way to Tipperary." And of course, we were obliged very quickly, and some of them knew it just as well as us, and they chimed in. I stood watching and talking all in, as I wanted to let the people of our country know just how it happened. There's no exaggerating. In those few lines, it is just as things happened on this Christmas Day of 1914. I should say there are no lines in the Bible so nice as peace on earth, God will, a good will towards men. It was proved that very day, as it was a sight never before witnessed on a battlefield. I should say, and the Germans were true to their words, it was like being at home in regards of quietness. Then it began to get dusk. So we had to depart after a very good Christmas Day. I shall never forget it myself. There are several of us, Lynn fellas, in the trenches, who can write the same as I have done. This letter was a bit difficult to read, because he had apparently a very weird accent, as it seems, or way of writing. Not very. It's more of an olden English way of writing. A very cool recollection of basically the day they had, from like raiding the chickens until them actually managed to join the trenches, sang together, exchange gifts. Really a magical thing, I would say. So, and I think hydration is important to keep the voice strong. That is very true. I purposefully went with water this time. Normally I have like some sort of elderberry juice or orange juice or something like this. Although not juice, more of a syrup thing. But especially when I'm reading, I always tend to go with water because it's just the most hydrating. So, I do really like the stories. Yeah, nice to read too. But as promised, we're gonna switch over to the scene for video watching, because I have 2 videos prepared from Extra History about the Christmas Truce specifically. Surprised it's not some kind of tea. Actually, I mean, I like drinking tea, but I'm always too lazy to make tea, as weird as it sounds. I mean, I do have a kettle and everything. I just need to put it on, but I don't know. I'm a bit weird in this regard sometimes. Although this is the time of year where I do drink definitely more tea. Maybe in the next break I'm gonna make a tea. Actually sounds nice. Okay. The tea would be very fitting for like the British thing. And to get an electric kettle. I mean, honestly, the alternative is like blasting it in the microwave. It works in a pinch, but it just feels so incredibly wrong. And I definitely do not like want to boil water in a pot. That's just way too much hassle. But yeah, normally I like boil the water in my electric kettle, and then like 1.5 liters, and then I put the water into like a thermos can, so I have it hot for longer. Okay, for now, let's switch over to the other scene and to the moving Lux. Hello. I have 2 videos prepared here for the Christmas Truce from Extra History. If a nice looking picked, just don't have anywhere to put it. Yeah, storage is always a bit of an issue. I get that. I definitely do get that. So, actually, real quick, wait. Let me just turn off the fire rustling here. Don't think it's much use right now. And let's get into the Christmas Truce, Stille Nacht from Extra History.
Christmas Eve, 1914. The war was supposed to be over by now. This little holiday special is brought to you by World of Tanks.
Yeah.
Use the invite code ARMISTICE if you're a new player who wants to check out the game. The Christmas Truce is one of the most poignant events of the First World War, a time when men rose up above the madness of the conflict and, for just a moment, saw each other as fellow humans. This is an event that definitely did happen. Thousands of men laid down arms in the truce, but a century of retellings has also kind of sanded down its rough edges and oversimplified its messy reality. Indeed,
I mean, it's actually something I said before too. Like nowadays, if you don't really look into it, the Christmas Truce is just retold as, oh, everything was cheery and hugged each other. And I mean, this wasn't everywhere on the front line. I mean, first of all, it was only on the Western Front. And it was mainly between the British and the Germans, since, you know, the French were not too keen on celebrating anything with the Germans while they were literally inside their homeland. And this is kinda understandable. But that's not to say that they also did not have truces in any way, shape, or form. But yeah, the most retold story is of the side of the British. The story of the letters they wrote of what happened. And there was still a lot of, you know, there was espionage going on in this time. There were definitely people, opportunists on both sides that used this to map out the trenches of the enemy. And others just wanted to use it to bury all the dead. Didn't really were in celebratory mood.
sanded down its rough edges and oversimplified its messy reality. Indeed, this event wasn't just the result of pure human spirit and holiday cheer. It was a host of unique factors that drove these enemies to spontaneously declare peace in no man's land. And really, it may not have been
Thank
all
you for
that
it.
spontaneous. Small armistices were happening every day. As frontline troops became accustomed to the rhythms of trench warfare, they learned that looking the other way now and then could bring a shred of safety and calm to their lives. The armies ate meals at the same time, which became a daily ceasefire.
That is also very true. This is something in times like this, there are those are like the pristine example of unspoken rules they had. Because at the end of the day, they were all humans. We're all humans. And every little bit of peace, of quietness was precious. And this is what why it led to this. Extra History does a very good job. I mean, there's so many great channels on it. Earlier we watched the oversimplified version of the World War I. Also very much recommended. After this I have another video prepared we're gonna watch later, probably more towards the end because it's a bit more of a sillier thing to lighten the mood up again. Because all things considered, it's still more of a dire thing to talk about after all. So I do want to lighten the mood a bit here and there, if possible at least. It's not always that easy.
Patrols frequently ignored each other, adopting a live and let live attitude.
Mhm.
Troops often shouted to each other across the lines. After all, the autumn battles had passed, and both sides were waiting out the winter. In reality, the weather was the primary enemy
Oh,
for both
yes.
sides. The high water table at Flanders meant that the trenches were always filling with water, sometimes collapsing and burying men inside. Soldiers leaned against the walls to sleep, trying to keep themselves out of the wet. Food supplies had to be hung up on dugout ceilings. And that winter had been particularly miserable. Weeks of rain flooded the dugouts. The mud pulled men down like quicksand. Now, British Field Marshal Sir John French had noticed the hands-off attitude his men were developing towards the enemy, and so he ordered attacks in late December to boost morale. And this resulted in heavy British losses. Concerned about possible fraternization over the holiday, he issued orders that no unofficial armistice would be tolerated. Morale was much better over in the German trenches. After all, they were winning. But many men were also experiencing their first holiday away from home. Knowing that this would be difficult, commanders brought Christmas to the trenches, shipping thousands of presents to the field. Each man received a gift from the Kaiser, cigar boxes for NCOs, a pipe with the Crown Prince on it for the ranks. The British, for their part, received a brass box from Princess Mary filled with cigarettes, tobacco, a Christmas card, and sweets. And then there were personal packages. Enterprises sprang up on the home front, offering
There were in fact on some parts of the front line, especially during the first Christmas, this was a logistical nightmare on both sides actually delivering all this stuff. Like they were flooded with this stuff. Some had so many presents they had some soldiers got so much stuff they had no place to store it anymore. It's insane.
family members a chance to send gift boxes to the troops. British soldiers received plum puddings and 1,000-count boxes of cigarettes. German and Austrian troops were bombarded with chocolate and salami and cognac. Both sides received winter clothing. In truth, though, the gifts were kind of a nuisance.
Yeah.
I mean, there was nowhere to put it all. Soldiers didn't have a place to store 1,000 extra cigarettes. But that Christmas Eve delivered a true gift. The rain stopped, and the trenches drained. Dry cold froze the mud into a hard surface, almost like a floor. Snow dusted the countryside. That afternoon, the gunfire dwindled, and in some sectors it stopped entirely. The weather just seemed too nice for it.
Yes, there are actual recounts from which I heard, where soldiers from both sides basically said, as an explanation to this happening, it was just too nice to fight on these days. The weather was just too perfect. Everything just felt too nice. Why ruin it, basically?
The Germans, stuffed with Christmas chocolate and cheered by the weather, started putting lit Tannenbaum up on their trench parapets. And then the German line started singing. Over on the British parapets, watchmen of the Scots Guard saw lines of lights along the enemy trench. At first they suspected an attack, but then they heard an ethereal sound drifting across no man's land. Stille Nacht, heilige Nacht.
Stille Nacht, Heilige Nacht. I cannot blame him for not being able to properly pronounce it. So Stille Nacht, Heilige Nacht is Silent Night, Holy Night. It is originally a German song, after all. I think it actually was. I think it's actually from Austria, even. It was an Austrian and a German who wrote it. And the first time it was sung was in a church, or was it a church in Austria, actually? I think the town still celebrates it where it happened, as far as I remember. I came through this town actually before. I don't remember the name. Where Silent Night, Holy Night, or Stille Nacht, Heilige Nacht was first sung ever.
The original Austrian version
Yeah.
of Silent Night. Sensing a challenge, Guards Officer Lieutenant Sir Edward Hulse decided that they should drown this out with their own carol. The sides went back and forth, but soon the competition merged into a harmony of Good King Wenceslas and Auld Lang Syne. The men began shouting Christmas greetings across the line, jokingly at first. A few even stepped out to talk. Hulse didn't know it, but the same thing was happening up and down the entire British line. Agreements formed. In some sectors, the officers met at the wire and shook hands, agreeing to cease hostilities the next day. In other areas, the ranks took the lead, Germans shouting across no man's land, English, tomorrow if you no shoot, we no shoot.
You read
At
this in the
times,
book.
it was just one brave soul walking into no man's land waving a newspaper. These overtures were extremely dangerous.
Oh,
Though
yes.
peace was breaking out in certain areas, it didn't happen everywhere. One British regiment responded to German caroling with a machine gun blast. Some unarmed soldiers were gunned down trying to broker this holiday armistice. But in most sectors, the ceasefire held. This truce mostly happened between German and British units. The French and the Belgians, whose countries were under German occupation, were less inclined.
Yes.
There were agreements to bury the dead and cease hostilities, but not as much fraternization. Yet, a Bavarian unit held fire during a French mass, and both sides halted fighting long enough for a guest, a soloist from the Paris Opera, to make a performance.
Okay, I did not
Indian
notice.
Troops, who were a bit unfamiliar with this whole Christmas deal, saw the lit German trees and thought of their own holiday of Diwali. They held fire, but also held position, until some Germans tempted them out of the trenches with cigars and cigarettes. Soon the men were smoking together on the parapet. That Christmas night, the troops slept in sublime quiet. Christmas Day dawned, bright and cold, the sky clear for the first time in weeks. To their shock, British troops looked across no man's land to see the Germans walking around on their parapets. Such a thing was suicidal in daylight, and that gesture of trust, more than anything, lured a few British out. It was heaven to at last stand up straight and walk on solid earth. Some had ventured into no man's land on Christmas Eve, but in daylight it was impossible to ignore the bodies lying between the trenches.
Yeah.
The two sides buried their dead in common graves, grieving side by side in joint services, listening to the faraway sounds of battle from other sectors. And that shared experience broke down the wall. Soldiers milled about together in no man's land, swapping overabundant gifts from home. British beef for uniform buttons, chocolate cake for barrels of beer. They exchanged hats. One German barber gave haircuts. The men chatted. After all, they shared so much in common. They lived in the same fields under the same rain, and they were equally sick of war. Besides, they were curious. What was life like on the other side?
Oh, yeah.
Who were these enemies? One British officer was perplexed to learn that his new German friend believed the armies of the Kaiser fought for freedom. That was impossible, the officer responded. We're fighting for freedom.
Well, especially during war, in times in the First and Second World War, way before the internet, you did not have you had to rely on the information you were given, and there was of course a lot of propaganda. Because if one side would find out that, they are fighting for like an, let's call it unsavory reason, morale would dip. Everybody was thinking they were fighting for were the good ones. Everybody was thinking that, at least the common soldiers and even the officers, like everybody at the front line, thought this, that they were doing it for the good. But it's it tends to be forgotten during war, but both sides of such a war, they are humans thinking they are protecting what they call home. Exactly, it's very beautifully summed up. In the end, everybody just, we read it in those letters too, and the people missing home, talking about the past. In the video it was like the first time they were away from the family ever, for many. And this is also like something that could have only happened in those environments, I think. I don't want to get like in like any specific current things, but in the current age at least, like the information flow is way different. You need to act way different if you want to control the flow of information, and don't want to demoralize your troops more than necessary. But back then it was way easier. The only information the troops got or could get their hands on were from letters and newspapers. And back home, where the letters originated, the news outlets were also like full of propaganda, basically, which was necessary to keep the war running.
Amid this, Lieutenant Hulse found himself talking to Lieutenant Thomas of the 15th Westphalians, who had something to pass on, a Victoria Cross and a packet of letters. An English officer had died in the German trench during the last attack. Perhaps he could give these to the man's family? Touched, Hulse removed his own silk scarf, a gift from home, and presented it in thanks. Thomas, embarrassed that he had nothing to give in return, sent a soldier to fetch the fur gloves that his family had sent. Up and down the line, men started bringing out footballs. Kickabouts broke out, with men from both sides chasing the ball among shell holes and sliding on the frozen ground. In one sector, a group of Highlanders challenged a Saxon regiment, who burst out laughing whenever a kilt flew up during play. But not all of this activity was goodwill. On both sides, a few used the gatherings to reconnoiter enemy trenches, and both sides used the time to repair dugouts. Of course, for some, this fraternization appeared false. One British soldier flashed his squadmate a hidden dagger, while another refused to smoke German cigarettes, fearing that they might be poisoned. When one squad of Bavarians discussed whether to meet the British, their corporal snapped at them. "Such a thing should not happen in wartime. Have you no German sense of honor left at all?" They weren't surprised. The night before, the same soldier had refused to join the unit's Christmas service. Corporal Hitler was odd like that. But his disapproval reflected the general's view. This was exactly the situation that Field Marshal French had feared. Commanders dispatched senior officers to threaten disciplinary action and insist that the men restart the war. In some sectors, the armistice came to an orderly close. Officers from both sides saluted and fired revolvers into the air, signaling that, all right, the war was back on. In a few places, troops resisted until nearly to New Year's Eve, but the generals would not have it. German command dispatched snipers to break the ceasefire. French ordered an artillery barrage, letting the machinery of war roll over the human connections of the frontline troops. Nothing like this Christmas truce would happen again. The generals wouldn't allow it. On Christmas Eve 1915, British officers ordered a 24-hour artillery barrage. Men who tried to form a truce were court-martialed. Machine guns drowned out German carols. But the generals needn't have bothered. The spirit of that truce was unique to 1914, a symptom of a young war.
Exactly.
By Christmas 1915, those troops had experienced chlorine gas and creeping bombardments. Zeppelins were bombing London. The Battle of Verdun would end just before the holiday, leaving 750,000 casualties. Indeed, many of the men who celebrated in no man's land that day would never see another Christmas. One of those unlucky ones was Lieutenant Sir Edward Hulse, who had sung carols and given a German officer his silk scarf. He died 3 months later while trying to save a wounded comrade. He was 25. And yet, Hulse is not remembered today for his military achievements, or even the book of letters that his friends published after his death. He and so many others are remembered for a victory entirely their own, when a group of brave men ventured into the line of fire, trusting their enemies not to shoot, and believing that humanity was better than the bonfire it had built for itself. Happy holidays, everybody.
I think the last thing, sorry, it's actually something that tears me up a little bit when I hear stuff like this. Under those circumstances, this is probably the best thing you can be remembered for nowadays. Being part of this so very unlikely but heartwarming event that took place. And it's good that they are remembered for this. For the humanity. Not for the bad things. I was gonna go to a
This was a
second
letter to a German newspaper in December of 1914. Yesterday there was a fierce and terrible onslaught of Christmas packages into our trenches. No man was spared. In the confusion, one soldier suffered a salami impaled straight into his stomach. Another had raisins from an exploding pastry fly directly into his eyes. A third had the misfortune of having a bottle of cognac fly into his mouth. This little holiday special is brought to you by World of Tanks. Use the invite code ARMISTICE if you're a new player who wants to check out the game. World War I was a letter-writing war, one where pencil and paper were a soldier's line of communication with friends and family, and reading those letters provides some insight into what life was like in those trenches. So today, let's read some excerpts from those soldiers' holiday letters. Now, of course, none of us at Extra Credits have ever experienced being deployed over the holidays, so real quick, I want to hand the mic over to somebody who has. Here is Wargaming's military specialist Richard Cutland back again to give us a little insight.
In my 30 years of service, I was extremely fortunate to only spend around 6 Christmases away from home and family.
Very good voice.
Lying in a muddy ditch in Northern Ireland, where we've been ordered to set up an observation post to watch the comings and goings of a known IRA terrorist. Cold, wet, hungry and tired, watching someone else celebrate Christmas with family and friends. It was certainly a low point for us all. As a young soldier, the easiest thing to do was not think about it. It was merely another day amongst a multitude of other days. The real heartbreak occurred after marriage and children. It was wrenching to explain why Daddy would not be there on such a special day. Tales of helping Santa at the North Pole or having to feed the reindeer quickly wore thin as my children grew older and wiser. A soldier's wife has much to contend with, and my own wife's angst and worry during any operational tour was compounded when I was away for the holidays. The army's always tried their best if circumstances allowed. If you were near a headquarters, the chefs would knock up a Christmas dinner with all the trimmings. Well, perhaps not all, but they did their best with what was available. Unfortunately, sitting with 100 men wearing paper hats was not quite the same as Christmas dinner with your family. Yet we were all aware it's necessary to spend such periods away. And let's face it, it was part of the job. But it was always a killer to be told that a deployment was imminent and Christmas would be cancelled. So to all those servicemen and women who find themselves away for this very special time, I salute you and wish you and your families peace and happiness.
Thank you, Richard. Now let's set the scene. It's Boxing Day, 1914, and Private Henry Williamson is writing home about the most extraordinary Christmas of his life. I'm writing from the trenches. In my mouth is a pipe presented by the Princess Mary. In the pipe is tobacco. Well, of course, you say, but wait. In the pipe is German tobacco from a German soldier. Yes, a live German soldier from his own trench. On Christmas Eve, both armies sang carols and cheered, and there was very little firing. The Germans called to our men to come and fetch a cigar, and our men told them to come to us. This went on for some time until a bold Tommy crept out and stood between the trenches, and a Saxon came to meet him. They shook hands and laughed. Thus the ice was broken. Our men are speaking to them now. German Corporal Joseph Wenzel was similarly amazed at the gathering, writing, "What I believed to be madness several hours ago, I could see now with my own eyes. Bavarians and English, until then the greatest of enemies, shook hands, talked, and exchanged items. A single star stood still in the sky directly above them, interpreted by many as a special sign from heaven. More and more joined, and the entire line greeted each other. For the rest of my life, I shall never forget this scene, which goes to show that human feelings continue to go on, even if, in these times, men do not know anything but killing and murdering."
Yes.
But not everybody held fire. British rifleman John Erskine's unit was fraternizing in no man's land when a soldier, disobeying his officer's order, shot one of the Germans. He writes, "The Germans immediately replied, and instead of firing on where the shot came from, they fired at the first person they saw. Unfortunately, this happens to be one of our corporals, who was shot through the head. A most regrettable fact connected with the affair was that he has 3 brothers in the battalion, and it must have had a disheartening effect on them. The Germans apologized, but it left a black mark on the day. Still, in many places, the peace held, until the generals ended it with artillery." The spirit of the Christmas truce would be rekindled the following year, albeit on a small scale. In December of 1915, French soldier Louis Barthas found himself in a spontaneous ceasefire when heavy rain forced both sides to abandon their trenches. He wrote, "Frenchmen and Germans looked at each other and saw that they were all men, no different from one another. They smiled, exchanged comments. Hands reached out and grasped. We shared tobacco, a canteen of coffee, or Pinard. One day, a huge devil of a German stood up on a mound and gave a speech, which only the Germans could understand word for word, but everyone knew what it meant because he smashed his rifle on a tree stump, breaking it in 2. Applause broke out on both sides. Meanwhile, our big shot leaders were in a furor. What in the Lord's name would happen if the soldiers refused to kill each other?" German soldier Hermann Bauer, also present, was thinking much the same.
Interesting thought. What if the soldiers refused to kill each other? Oh, how easy wars could end if this would be the case. Maybe a foolish and naive thought, but still a nice one to contend to.
He wrote, "The infantry does not shoot anymore, just the crazy artillery. The masters make war, they have a quarrel, and the workers, the little men, have to stand there fighting against each other.
Oh yeah.
Is that not a great stupidity?"
It is.
Once again, senior officers broke the truce with artillery and court-martial threats. The fighting began again, and Barthas would spend 3 more Christmases at war. The same was true for many others. In fact, Christmas of 1916 brought Canadian infantryman John McLean his first taste of combat. He wrote, "Dear Mother, I haven't written for over a week now, but I couldn't very well. We went into the trenches on Christmas Eve and were in for 6 days. It was not too bad at all, far better than I expected. All our fellows came out fine, except Jack Ivner, who got a machine gun bullet through the leg. The noise was awful, but a person will get used to that after a while. I spent Christmas Day in a dugout. If I live to be 300 years old, I will never forget this Christmas week. One night, I was going up a trench, and I saw a big gray cat sitting on the parapet. I'd like to tell you more, but I can do that when I get home. Now you are doing too much worrying. We are all right if a man is careful." A month later, he was dead. Meanwhile, another Canadian, Jack Davy, was having a bittersweet Christmas. He had come home after months in a POW camp, only to find himself at a military hospital in Toronto, thousands of miles from his new fiancée. He wrote to her on Boxing Day, "Darling Kitty, many thanks for the letter and the card with Christmas wishes. We had quite a snowstorm on Christmas Eve. It's quite a novelty to see a real white Christmas. Yesterday was a lovely day. On the whole, I had a good time, but I hope next year won't be such a disappointment for us, sweetheart. Surely this rotten luck of being separated at Christmas can't go on forever. 1 week has passed since I was measured for my leg. I wish that I could have it by the new year so I could start the year on both feet again. It will soon be 2 years since I walked like a human being. It seems a long time to talk about it, but I can picture those fields and imagine I can see the exact spot where I fell, as though it only happened yesterday. I guess it'll be a long day before I forget it. But I hope that all the dark days are behind us now, sweetheart. We just have to be happy and live long to make up for it all. As the war ended and the veterans trickled home, that is exactly what they tried to do. Yet their holidays spent in the shadow of dugouts would never fully leave them. There are so many letters like these. Honestly, deciding which ones to include was the hardest part. But if this happened to capture your imagination, try something later. If you go home for the holidays, or if you happen to already be there, ask your relatives if they have any old letters lying around. It's possible that the next story from the trenches might come from your own family. Happy holidays, everybody. We'll see you next year.
Yeah, in my case, this is certainly not the case that there are like letters lying around. Because I did try to dig a bit into the family history of my family. Unfortunately, there's nothing anybody could like tell me. Sadly, would be very interesting though. But yeah, I actually got a little bit teary-eyed there. And hello, Chris, by the way. Welcome in. Welcome, welcome. So. Okay. Now that we had a few more videos, let me hop over to the talk screen again for reading. Although we will not do some reading immediately because I already paused the ad break a couple times during the video. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna make a little break now. Gonna start the music up for y'all. And I'm gonna make myself a quick little tea in the meantime. So, for everybody else, now's a good time to stock up on snacks and drinks. And I'll see you all in a couple of minutes again. And we are back. Hello, hello. Put the music down a little bit. And make a bit of ruckus. I think it cannot be picked up by the... Have it like this? Probably not really audible with the pouring in the water for the tea. Honey here. No tea is complete without honey for me. Okay. We're gonna continue reading a bit from this beautiful book over here. Anybody's interested in what I'm reading? Let's go through. Just going to do a few random letters every now and then. Because this book is like 200 pages or 300 pages long and I will not be able to read everything. So, okay. So of course, second. So, the ambiance needs just right after. Letter from Rifleman John Erskine, 5th Battalion of the Scottish Rifles. On Christmas Eve, the Germans had a band going and were singing carols till some of our shots hit rather near to them and put a summary stop to it. It was a bitter cold night, and on Christmas Day, for the first 4 hours, it was very misty. And we had to be on the qui vive, but the mist lifted about 11 o'clock, and as if common consent, fighting stopped also. And we were treated to a most amusing spectacle. A big proposition of the Germans a big proportion of the Germans speak English, and one of the officers, getting on the parapet, shouted over that they wished our officers a Merry Christmas and a speedy termination of the war. Not content with this, our chaps, or rather, the regular regiment to which we are attached, coolly walked out, and we witnessed the amazing spectacle of British soldiers and German officers shaking hands, with a few thousand rifles on the one hand and a few hundred on the other pointed at their heads. I don't say which side had the few thousands, but you may guess. They gave our men 2 barrels of beer, and in return we threw across a few tins of bully. We had a tragedy in the trenches during the time. The handshaking, etc. was going on. One of the regulars disobeyed our strict orders not to fire, let off a shot. The Germans immediately replied, and instead of firing at where the shot came from, they evidently fired at the first person they saw. Unfortunately, this happened to be one of our corporals, who was shot through the head. He died within 24 hours. A most regrettable fact, connected with the affair, was that he has 3 brothers in a battalion. Must have been most disheartening to affect them. Actually, one of the letters we heard from in the story, in the video. This was quite by coincidence. Rifleman George Eard, Decoy, 3rd Battalion Rifle Brigade. You will be rather surprised to hear that we spent a fairly enjoyable Christmas in the trenches. I can't go into the whole story, but suffice to say, an unofficial truce was arranged by our regiment and the Hanoverians facing us. All honor to them, but they played the game and not a shot was fired long after midnight. We were like a crowd of kids on a day's holiday. And it was a real relief to be able to walk off ground without being plucked. We swapped cigarettes and cigars with them, and a lot of them being able to speak English. We had chats on anything except the war. Of course, we were not allowed to go into their trenches or they in ours, but we met halfway, and in some places even got as far as the wire entanglement. Today, war is going as usual, and their shells are just now falling some 300 yards from here. I was talking to a German bombardier yesterday afternoon. He had lived in London some time and could speak good English. His parting words were, "Today we have peace, tomorrow you fight for your country, I fight for mine. Good luck," and back he went. I shouldn't be surprised if he was one of the gunners shelling this morning. Such is war. I had a cigar after dinner yesterday, given to me by a German officer, to whom I gave cigarettes, and found out later the cigarettes were called Kitcheneers. Funny, wasn't it? People in England will never believe it, I'm sure. Even to us, it seems unreal. Football was played in front of the trenches, but an attempt to get up a match with them fell through, because the German commander would not allow it. I might mention that it was they who made the first advance for the truce on Christmas Eve, by shouting over to our trenches, "Come over here." And when one of our fellows went, they gave him a small Christmas tree covered with lights, and a message inviting officers to meet halfway. The truce was arranged, a searchlight playing in the group between the trenches. We had plenty of Christmas fare. They seemed a very nice lot of fellas, but of course, they were not Prussians, but Hanoverians. Once again, it shows like the difference of the different groups of Germans here. Because German is not necessarily a German. And I don't just talk about the difference between Austrian, Swiss, and Germans. No, most of the Germans are still, although not that noticeably, divided into their states. And they have a very own state identity too. They're the Prussians or the Brandenburgians, by now, which don't really exist that much anymore. They're the North Germans, around Hamburg, Bremen, the Saxons, the Bavarians, people from Rhineland-Pfalz, or I think Palatinate. I don't know how to say it in English. People from Hesse. There's still very much different groups within the Germans. It mostly is visible through dialect though, and maybe some certain dishes you only get in certain regions. Next letter is from Rifleman C. Mallard, from the machine gunner section, the Rifle Brigade. About 4:30 on Christmas Eve, we heard a band in the Christmas trenches, but our artillery spoiled the effect by dropping a couple of shells right in the center of them. You can guess what became of the band, for we have not heard it since. We're just wondering whether the Germans would agree to a couple of days of peace at Christmas, when we were surprised to see Christmas trees struck on top of their trenches, lit up with candles, the all men sitting on top of the trenches. So of course, we got out of ours past a few remarks, inviting each other to come over, have a drink and a smoke, but we did not like to trust each other at first. After time, 3 of our officers started out to meet 3 German officers who were approaching the trenches. They came on in the rays of a searchlight, playing the German lines, and it made a fine picture to see the 6 officers meeting between the lines, shaking hands and smoke each other's cigarettes. All the boys on both sides gave a tremendous cheer, and we became quite excited. After a time, the officers returned, bringing with them souvenirs from the Germans. Then it was the troops' turn, and we swarmed out of our trenches and met each other, shook hands, and exchanged knickknacks. I noticed that some of the Germans were using British-made matches. We took them out some tea and cocoa when they were eagerly accepted, but not till after we had drunk some first. They're cute boys, most of them very young. We agreed not to do any shooting till midnight on Christmas night. Our going over to them seemed quite to alter their opinion of the British soldiers, and now, I believe, they think a lot of us. We also agreed to play a football match with them on Christmas Day, and we got a football ready, but the colonel would not allow them to play. So we had a game on our own. It seemed a treat to get a bit of exercise, and in the evening we entertained each other with sing-songs until about 10 p.m. And that ended our Christmas on 1914, which was very enjoyable under the circumstances. Just after midnight, we could hear away on the right the plonk plonk bullets as they hit the ground, and we knew the game had started again. Let me real quick take out of the tea, otherwise it gets too bitter. Bit off. Actually, I have one of those mugs that change their appearance when they're heated. I don't know how they're called actually. I got it as a gift once. Lumsy me. Hold on a second. Drinking a bitter tea and immediately spilling on. Oh my shit. Good thing I'm not wearing my jacket right now. Wouldn't get any tea spills on it. Much more preferred apparently on a white shirt. I don't think we're going that much longer. Gonna read a few more stories and then we gonna wrap it up with a more entertaining video at the end. Because reading so much actually is quite exhausting. As fun as it may be. I'm sorry I'm getting kind of a bit. No need to apologize. Thank you for stopping by, Chris, and get a good rest in, okay? Hope see you soon. The next letter is from Captain Philip Dawson Harrison of the 1st Brigade of North Staffordshire Regiment. As I told you, our trenches vary from between 30 feet to 300 feet for the Germans. Well, on Christmas Eve, we went once more up into the fire trench. About 6:30 at night, with one accord, all firing in front of us ceased. Cheery remarks were shouted across the trenches. Later on one of the officers came halfway across and was met by our captain, who gave them from 7 o'clock to 7 o'clock the Christmas morning to bury the dead, several of whom had been lying about for some time. A little later appeared on their near trenches light like footlights on the theater, started singing. We then gave them a song. This went on until all their and our men were sitting on the parapets of our respective trenches, with fires blazing all around. It was a thing to see and remember. The singing went on far into the night. First they sang, then we sang. On Christmas morning, they came out in small parties to start burying. An officer came halfway across, and I went out to meet him. We talked for a bit, and then, changing to look around, I found that half of our men were out talking too, and shaking hands and giving each other presents of cigarettes, cigars, chocolate, bully beef, and biscuits. There was any amount of talk, and to cut a long story short, by the time breakfast was over, there were nearly all our men and theirs on the ground between the trenches, the greatest of pals. Arrangements were made, and we arranged for no shots to be fired from either side until 9 o'clock. Stop the time at night. So, all day long, this crowd of enemies were friends. Mind you, all the time the regiment on our right and left were having business as usual. At dusk, we got into our respective trenches, but nobody fired again. There was another impromptu concert at night. This morning, about 10 o'clock, I met one of their officers halfway, and he told me that they had instructions to shoot as occasions occurred. As we arranged an hour's grace, and the first shot has just been fired. While I was talking to him this morning, there was my captain with another officer and 2 German officers, surrounded by a swarm of English and German Tommies, having their photos taken. The high authorities on both sides did not seem to like the above proceedings at first, but the men took matters into their own hands. And so, there you are. If you could only have seen this mob, you would have thought you were dreaming. We find that it is a Saxon regiment, or rather 2 regiments, with whom we had a real good bust-up about 6 weeks ago. A message just has been thrown over from them on a piece of dirty cardboard. We shoot into the air. But of course, war is still war. And I expect we shall be at it properly again in a short time. Still, it is an experience never to be forgotten, and I would not have missed it for the world, nor would anybody else who was there. They looked very clean and well clothed, had plenty to eat. They like our hairy coats very much, and could hardly believe they were government issued. think we're gonna go with one more letter. Let me see. Which one we doing? Here. Lieutenant Colonel George Breton Laurie, 1st Battalion of the Royal Irish Rifles. It's the last story for today. Here we are on Christmas Day. We have had a curious time of it. Last night, about 11 o'clock, the enemies, 100 yards only from us, put lanterns up on the parapet and called out, "Do not shoot after 12 o'clock, and we will not do so either." One of our men ventured across. He was not fired upon. He was given a cigar and told to go back. A German officer came out next and asked for 2 days' truce from firing. But we said only 1 day. Then we saw both sides, English and Germans, begin to swarm out to meet each other. We thought it is wiser to keep our men in, because we did not trust the Germans. So I rang up the general to tell him this. We had to station sentries on the trenches to keep the men back. They were all so eager to talk to the Germans. Then I offered to go across myself and learn what I could. And finally, the German general asked me to send one of our officers over to them. This I did, and gave the latter as an ostensible reason the Daily Telegraph of December 22nd, which I had got hold of, and which contained a very fair account of the troubles in Austria-Hungary and Berlin. We went out with this paper, met some German officers, and discovered a certain amount. They were very anxious to know if the Canadian division had arrived, whether our trenches were very muddy, and I told him that our rifles' fire was good. We said that our rifle fire in general was our weak point, etc., etc. So, this is the queer position of affairs. We fire a pistol shot off at 12 midnight tonight by arrangement, as they reply with some shots over our heads, after which things continue to hum as before. You have no idea how pleasant everything seems, with no rifle bullets or shells flying about. I need hardly tell you that I have kept our men ready in the trenches all the same, as we do not trust our friends further than we can see them. As to other matters, the pheasants and partridges arrived in time, and we lunched off them scrumptiously today. Many thanks. The chocolate arrived and was distributed this afternoon to the men. I enclosed 3 Christmas cards. They are very hard to get, and you had better keep them, and you had a bit better keep them as mementos this war. I'm sending one to my mother. Over 500 pounds of plum pudding arrived for our men this afternoon. If more does not turn up tomorrow, I will write to the ADC of General Rawlinson to find out what has happened to the remainder. Whilst we are peaceable, the guns are booming out now, and then some miles away, on our left and right, where the French are fighting. I suppose we all thought the Germans' behavior, that they had something up their sleeves and are looking out for squalls. They said that their army was in Moscow and the Russians were beaten, and moreover that the war could be over in 2 or almost 3 weeks. So we are expecting a push. this concludes the reading. Because it's probably a bit noticeable. I'm already getting a bit iffy with the reading. Put the book aside. And yeah, for the end today, I thought we're gonna hand it on a more of a cheery note. And I have rediscovered a video I watched a long time ago that is about the First World War, and it's a video, a music video made by the BBC, by the British broadcast. It's a rap battle of the different leaders reenacted, basically, about the war. I thought this would be a really funny thing to end it after all this more solemn things we had to go through with these stories, to raise up the spirits a bit again. So let me switch over to the scene. This. And away we go. Here we are. Oh, it was not meant to be seen. I mean, it is really just my stream deck, my stream overview. Anyway, if this is it's just 4.5 minutes long. Stop this though. And language may offend. It's, as I said, it's the cause of World War I in form of a rap battle. I thought it is kind of funny. It was made by the BBC, so it is not like extremely harsh. It's BBC level, but I think it's still very funny. So we're gonna end it on this one today. Oh god, this is loud. Wait, let me turn it down a bit. So here we have the most quote-unquote famous people of the war, the people, the leaders of those countries, and Gavrilo Princip, the assassin. So King George of Great Britain, Kaiser Wilhelm II, Tsar Nicholas II, General Joffrey of France, and Emperor Franz Joseph of Austria-Hungary, and as I said, Gavrilo Princip, the shooter. The one who assassinated the Archduke Franz Ferdinand, the heir to the Austro-Hungarian throne. I think he was a student. And fun thing, by the way, for those who are not aware, those three, the King of Britain, Germany, and the Tsar of Russia, they're cousins. They have the same grandmother. So, very funny thing. We're gonna get started. Oh god, I got the hiccups. Oh. Why the subtitles in Polish?
Yo, your fatty friend's Ferdinand didn't see Princip's pistol. Too busy guzzling his 10th Wiener Schnitzel. Pop the cap in his ass for my black hand brothers. Shave off that tash, it's bigger than your mother's. Now just like your bald head, you ain't got no air. I spit rhyme as your empire decline. Have you any notion of United Slav Nation? You catch my drift or do you want a translation? Serbia got friends, yo, Russia's our homie. Think we're scared? Here's 2 words for you. Blow me.
Little fun fact, by the way, personal fun fact. I recently learned that one of my friends had a great aunt who she got like over 100 years old, and she actually met the Kaiser, Kaiser Franz Joseph, in person, and told basically my friend in her later years that about it.
Huh? Who the hell is that?
Nothing to do with us. Back to the story. The story of doom for poor tiny Serbia's about to go boom. You hear me, assassin? Our troops are massing. Get ready for the bombing, the shooting, the gassing. Here is the
This is so silly, especially like with this old guy. Big talk, but the Russian Hungarians army was so weak. Yeah, this is very accurate.
Back up, friends, Joseph. Serbia's our brethren. Same blood, same religion, same Slavic complexion. We're packing more army than you got salami. So stop your brag and your trolling, or the Cossack paint train starts rolling. Last time you kicked off a swift revolution. This time my solution is your dissolution. Beware the Russian bear.
Actually, Tsar Nicholas was wholly unprepared to be a Tsar in the first place. And it was like this whole thing back going on with Rasputin, and you know that the family of the Tsar was particular unpopular amongst the Russians, more than the ruling monarchs in the other countries, which also led to the fact that Russia left the war in 1916 and basically got reformed as the Soviet Union.
Everyone knows me, the Kaiser, Cooey. I'm Kaiser Wilhelm II, the first boss, I guess. But like the Godfather, the sequel kicks ass. Got clowns to the west of me and jokers to the east. But Austro-Hungary is my mate. Gonna eradicate the Serbian.
He was an absolute egoist. He had such a huge ego, and he wanted to be like Kaiser Wilhelm I. He wanted to be more, overshadow everybody, but he was not talented enough for it.
So back off, cars and Nick. Don't take the mic and tell your mates France not to interfere. This ain't no prance, it's a German war dance.
Chill out, cousin Willie. Stop acting so silly. You'll be tripping by flipping the bird willy-nilly. The armies of the Triple Entente, mighty. Russia, France, and this bitch, blighty. Your rhymes are the shambles, your words are the gamble. You're taking an enormous punt. No wonder my homies, and yours too, think you're a massive, difficult chap. You're
That is true. Nobody really liked the German leader. He was an absolute. He was not nice to be around, because he was such an egoist. Yeah. The British still weren't that warmed up to the French back there. Like, there was definitely like a bit content, but not that. This was his delusion, basically. Yeah. Yeah, basically, as I said, like, those three were cousins, had the same grandmother. What I find weird about the idea, or that Russia have cared about Slavicism back then, that might have been interest for the Black Hand, but all the royal houses did not care about. Yeah, I mean, it was just to. It was not that different from how it is nowadays, just increase their sphere of influence. They had the connection with Slavs, they had a long friendship with Serbia under the pretext of Slavs. They shared the same religion with Russian Orthodoxy, generally Orthodoxy. I think there's like Serbian Orthodoxy too. I'm not that familiar with religion, but they basically were both Christian Orthodox, so they shared an additional connection there. And they became basically friends, allies under the pretext of containing Austro-Hungary. Also, Nicholas and William wrote each other during the war, calling out Willie and Nicky. Yeah, absolutely. I knew this too. I mean, they basically grew up together. This is the insane part.
Look into my eyes, you see compromise, your collective demise. before I lie down now.
Yeah, but William II was an absolute, like, it was an idiot. That was 14. The gramophone here. I thought we're gonna end it today on a more of a high note. Oh, we still have to wait. Oops. Hi. Who is this beautiful fellow over there? No, just kidding. Yeah. Yeah, William II was an absolute clown, actually. A clown with too much power, in my opinion. I have to run, pick up my mother from the airport, have a great stream. I mean, we're gonna end it now anyway, Train. Thank you for being here, and, you know, good luck picking up your mother. Have a safe drive. Thank you for being here, Train. But yeah, this is gonna be the end for today's stream. I wanted to do it a bit shorter. Especially since we did a lot of reading. Great timing then on my... Yeah, that's a great timing then. Yeah. I hope you enjoyed the stream. Next weekend we're not gonna have a themed weekend, we're gonna have a normal weekend. Although there will be a collab with Callistra, Elisra, and Rena on Sunday, if I remember correctly. And really I don't have that much plan on how the next week's stream will turn out. I have to look through it, how I wanna plan it. I have a few private things going on, so we will see how it goes. I did. You have a good reading voice. Oh, thank you. Actually, I mean, I said at the beginning of the stream, I do not like my own voice. I think it sounds weird. But I think it's a very common thing for many streamers. But I'm glad you like it. Reading is always... it's always nice to do it, and I plan to do a few more reading streams. But it's always a bit hard to find good books because... Actually, I do not read a lot of books directly. I gather all my information and the stuff I know from all kind of sources. But man, this is a good opportunity to get more into books. I also don't want to like read full-blown books on stream because it's just too much. Like this with short stories in between. This works really well. Anyway, enough blabbering. I hope you enjoyed your stream. And once again, now at the end, if any of you want to donate something towards the Extra Life campaign, the link is down below in the panels. If you have anything to spare, it's for Children's Hospital in the US for the emergency fund. So feel free if you want to. And if you're uncomfortable with donating something to a third-party site, all the proceeds of the streams during my 6 weeks where I'm doing this will go directly towards the counter as well. I will be adding it at the end of the stream, updating the counter. So yeah. Then all that's left for us to do is looking for someone to raid. I see 2 people are online right now. And I think I really... Oh, okay, yeah, okay. We're gonna raid Cirque the Sellers. He's doing an art stream right now. In terms of his Cirquetober art stream. So we're gonna raid over towards him. A very talented artist, and I just think his model is extremely cool. So yeah, we're gonna hop over to Cirque now. Say hi to him for me. I rarely get the chance to raid him. He's often not online when I'm finishing up stream. Very nice fella. Get the raid ready. Yes. Once again, thank you so much everybody for joining me here. Let's huddle Cirque. Yes, let's huddle Cirque. thanks everybody for being here. I hope you have a nice rest of your Sunday, however much time of it will remains for you. And I hope to see you all in the next stream. Until then, bye bye.